I'm Kevin Power, and this is SaskScapes, the podcast featuring stories of arts, culture, and heritage in Saskatchewan. This episode of SaskScapes is sponsored by the Saskatchewan Association of Theatre Professionals, supporting Saskatchewan's performing arts and artists and promoting Saskatchewan talent across Canada and around the world. Well, welcome to episode 101 of SaskScapes. Yes, we finally passed the threshold of 100 episodes, and so on we go to episode 200. Okay, now my guest. She is an actor, a playwright, a producer. She holds degrees in both psychology and fine arts and acting, and she is taking the province and country and beyond by storm. Yulissa Campos was born in Ecuador, and how she found her way to Saskatchewan to study at the U of S is a story all on its own. And when Yulissa arrived, it was not long before she realized that there was a gap in the representation of Latinx characters on stage. I mean, she simply didn't see herself represented. So when that happens, what does one do? Change your accent? Do everything you can to blend in? Yeah, I suppose a person could, but not this person. Yulissa embraced her uniqueness and has been on a mission to change the theatrical landscape. Her plays have received critical acclaim, landing some very prestigious showcases and theater festivals, and have appeared in fringe festivals and theater companies across Canada. With the foundation of Ay Caramba Theater, Yulissa has gone on to collaborate with other Latinx artists within Saskatchewan and beyond, and adds a fresh voice to our theaters, a voice that she and others who identify as Latinx can relate to. I mean, think about it. After all, isn't that one of the purposes of the performing arts? I mean, to see parts of ourselves in the stories and characters on stage, film, and television? Yeah, I think it is. Okay, this is Yulissa Campos. Oh, so many questions to ask you.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, Yulissa Campos, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Can I just say there's something that I love about the sound of your language, the sound of the whole region where you're from, but particularly people's names. There's something very lyrical, I find, in a lot of the names that I hear. I mean, Yulissa Campos is it's so lovely. It has just such a lovely lilt to it. I remember I went to university with somebody, I'm not sure where she was from, but I have never forgotten her name. Her name was Tasia Vasilakos. And it was just I loved saying it because of just the way it rolls.
Oh, thank you. I'll make sure to let my dad know because he chose my name.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. So I just wanted to address something right off the top, so then I'll know how to use the correct terminology. And so I guess what I'm asking for is your feeling on the term Latinx. Do you feel that that's an accurate portrayal of yourself and the whole Latin experience, or how is your feeling toward that word versus, the traditional Latina, Latino, or Hispanic?
Well, Hispanic is whoever speaks Spanish, and that doesn't, it not only includes Latin American people, because you can be from Spain and you're Hispanic,
right?
Because you speak Spanish. So the Latin American region is all that region that is composed by Mexico all the way to South America. The term Latinx was introduced a few years ago to include those who don't represent with binary terms.
Right.
So non-binary people are people who don't feel like they are 100% members of the Latin American region, because we are the product of colonization. So therefore, they come up with the term Latinx. I respect it and I use it because I find it's a very inclusive term. Since our language is rich in gender, that's just the nature of Spanish. It's hard to find a term that is non-binary, a term that's neutral. Therefore, Latinx was created. Usually you say Latina for a feminine gender, and masculine for, and Latino for masculine.
Right.
And there's no in between. So that's why I use Latinx to address a big group of people, like in general, but I call myself a Latina because my pronouns are she, her, and I identify with a feminine gender.
Right. Yeah, that was my understanding of the definition of Latinx. I just heard various social commentary on it being such a quote unquote woke phrase for those who want to give the impression of feeling enlightened. And I heard somebody actually say, but it actually is incredibly offensive. And I thought, really? So I just wanted to get your opinion on that, because I hear it often, so I think it can't be that offensive.
Yeah, no, it is acceptable. As I said, it's a term that was introduced recently, like a few years ago, just to integrate those members who don't feel that they belong either to the feminine or masculine, Latino, or they just don't feel that they belong to the stereotypical idea of being Latin American. Because I usually use Latin American because that's the region, right? So, yeah, it's a new term. Even among our community, we still are like, okay, so should we use this and that? But it's interesting that this term is only in English. It's not in Spanish.
Ah, so yeah. How is it referenced in Spanish?
Oh, we just said Latin American.
Ah, right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the X is something that it was introduced in America, actually.
Well, for the purposes of our conversation, I shall feel comfortable using Latinx moving forward. So that's great. Yeah. All right. So you grew up in Ecuador.
Yes, I did. I was born and raised in Guayaquil, Ecuador.
Okay. And is that a fairly major center?
Yeah, it's the biggest city in the country, but it's not the capital. It's like Toronto.
Right.
The biggest city, but then the capital is Ottawa. For us, our capital is Quito in the Highlands. Guayaquil is the biggest city in the country. It's a coastal city, so I grew up mainly in the hot weather, surrounded by beaches and palm trees.
Having lived in Hawaii for a while, although it's not nearly the same region, just to have warm and palm trees is something that suits me just fine. Much better than winter.
Right?
Yeah. So what was life for you like growing up there? What was what did your parents do?
So my parents are professors. Both are university professors.
Oh.
Yeah, it's funny how they both focus in business administration and accounting, like numbers and anything related to business. And yeah, I decided to study theater and psychology. So it's very interesting how I didn't follow their same interest. So
are you the only sibling in your family, or do you have other siblings?
No, I have a younger brother. We're only 2 kids. He's 8 years younger than me.
Uh-huh. And is he artistic?
No, he's computer science. So he's all about numbers.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we're all over the place. We're totally different. I'm the artistic child, the one that since I was 3, I will, go into the stage and start singing. I was never shy or afraid. My brother's the total opposite. He doesn't like to go out. He's not that outgoing extrovert. He's a 100% introvert.
Right. And you have memories as young as 3 of wanting to be in front of people?
Yeah, I have so many memories, 3 and 5 years old, when I would travel with my family, with my parents. I was an only child then. and I will like sing in the bus. Like they will go in these like tour buses with their friends and colleagues, and I remember like me singing, dancing. Yeah, I was a very outgoing child. Even until like I was in high school, I was in every single extracurricular activity, every camp. I was in drama camp. I was in the music one, painting. I was in every single event that my mom found it very annoying because none of my parents are very outgoing. Like they weren't the type of parents that will go to school and be on top of everything. Like they trust me and they're like, yeah, as long as you get good marks, I know you're doing good. They never went to my school to see how I'm doing, if my marks are going great. For them, the only thing that worked and was value was to see my report cards. So having a child that every day, like every week, will come up with, oh, I need money for this costume. I'm going to be doing this event and this event. Like I was always doing something that, yeah, my mom found it annoying sometimes. She's like, can you stop just getting into every single event for once?
Yeah. Well, that's great. So it sounds like you really were, you had a lot of avenues available to you to express as a child versus being theatrically and culturally starved.
Yeah, no. I was blessed to have parents that will always support me, even though when they found that it was annoying, they will always support me. they never said no to education. That's why they had only two children, just because life it's kind of hard back home. So having more than one child means that you need to really work hard to give them a good life. Otherwise, you will give half to each one, right? So if you want to give them good education and put them in language school so they can learn English or another language and go to a private school that will give them the tools to go abroad, you need to have at least one or two kids. More than that, you're putting yourself in a situation where you can't afford good education for them. So that's what my parents did. They only had two children, and they did their best to give us the best education they could.
Do you remember your first live theater experience from the audience?
Yeah, I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was in high school. It was the drama camp. It was a musical. It was Mamma Mia.
Ah, right.
Yeah, so I was part of one of Sophie's girlfriends. So we're singing and dancing. Yeah, that was the first one. And then I have several ones where I will sing or I will dance or I will do both or the triple threat. And then when I was 16, I really wanted to study acting. And my parents were not opposed, but they were afraid of what are you going to do with your life.
Right. When did you see your first live theatrical production as an audience member? Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Let me think. Well, high school showcases will be like the first theatrical ones, but the first like professional, it was cabaret back home. They did a cabaret in Spanish, and that was like the first big production that I saw. And I think I would have been 16. And then, I will see more theater because I always liked art, like artistic stuff. Like I fell in love with theater, with acting when I was 12. I was watching Gone with the Wind, and I don't know why I loved that movie. Like, I just found that it was so dramatic and so intense and full 4 hours. I loved it. I'm not sure why, but I loved it when I was 12, and that really pushed me. Like, I don't know, that really fired that desire of being on stage or on the screen one day. And from there, I worked my way, getting into like dancing classes, singing classes, acting classes. Yeah, but to answer your question, I think I was 16 when I saw my first show.
It's interesting. I mean, you can't get more classic than Gone with the Wind, but and so that leads me to ask you, and maybe it was just such a magical film for you to watch that this didn't enter your mind at that time. But was there a part of you when you were watching Gone with the Wind that sort of that inner voice that said, where am I in this? Why am I feeling like I'm not represented?
That's an interesting question, because at age of 12, I never thought about not belonging and not being represented. And that was because where I grew up, I would see people like me on TV. I grew up watching telenovelas, right? Like the soap opera.
Right.
That's part of my culture. We would watch telenovelas every day, morning, afternoon, night. And there were Latina women there from all over Latin America, like mainly Venezuelan soap operas. Telenovelas were huge when I was a kid. And then it shifts to Colombian ones. Now Colombia is like the big boss right now.
Right.
And then Miami, Telemundo. But so I never felt that I didn't belong. Like, I always knew that I could see myself on TV because I saw women that looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in Hollywood, I didn't see as much, but because telenovelas were a huge part of my TV time, I never felt underrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw Gone with the Wind, I understood the situation of the Civil War and everything in the States, and I know it was a historical movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was part of history, but never, it never clicked in my head that, I don't belong and I don't see people like me on the screen. It was later on when I moved to Canada that hit me. So I went from someone that I had privilege in my country because I still have, my skin is lighter than other people, and I have light brown eyes, which is also like a feature that is less common than our common features. So I was never seen as the minority there. I still have some privilege. So moving to Canada was like a big slap on my face when I became a person of color. To me, a person of color back home was someone who was Afro-Latino.
Right.
So knowing that now I'm a person of color, I'm a minority, that it took me a while to understand, because it's like someone took away my privilege without even knowing it.
It's an interesting time that we're in, because this very topic has come up with the release of the film, the musical of the stage version of In the Heights. And there's been a lot of discussion amongst some people that they felt like their skin color wasn't represented within the Latinx community in that movie, that it was very light-skinned for the most part. That kind of conversation just doesn't occur to me to happen, but I can understand when I hear it that there must be a tremendous sensitivity for those who feel like they're not being seen because of the color of their skin within that culture.
Yeah, so this is the thing. And in our culture, in our environment, we have colorism. It's a type of racism, but it's a racism that only focuses on the color of skin. So the lighter you are, the more privilege you have. Mm-hmm. And that's because of colonization. So I grew up with people that looked like me mostly. And as I said, like darker people, they were obviously the ones that were seen as like lower class.
Right.
And that was the privilege that I carried with me. And when and we have white Latinos too. So when you see a white Latino, they have even more privilege than me, that I'm in the middle. So growing up in a culture like America, that must have been a total different understanding, because you're not only battling the colorism within your culture, but you're also battling the race. But you're also fighting against the racism towards your culture in a different country. So I guess that's why people were upset, or were those comments about the moving to the Heights. I haven't watched it, but I can see it happening. And it's just because they're two different scenarios. Like for me, colorism had to do a lot with classism. So if you have lighter skin, people assume that you have more money and you're the upper class. And if you're darker skin, people assume that you're lower class. Right. But in the States, it's a total different world, right? Where just being a Latino puts you already further down in the ladder. And then being a Latino of color puts you even further down the ladder. So I guess the representation we have on TV of a Latino person is someone who's lighter skin, or someone who's all voluptuous and exotic, like Sofia Vergara. And that even happened in the soap operas. Later on, when I grew up and I started like connecting the dots, when I moved to Canada and I would go often to visit my parents while I was in school, I would see that every actor in the telenovelas were my skin tone or even lighter. They all had green eyes or light brown eyes, but I didn't see a Black actor in the telenovelas. And that actually, that was that was awakening for me. It was the moment that I realized we do have colorism in our own TV, in our own programs. I just never noticed it because I was not part of the group, right? I saw myself represented, but then my best friend, who's Afro-Latino, she pointed out to me and she said, I've never seen myself on TV. Haven't you noticed that Telemundo never puts women like me on TV? And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. I don't see that. Now I see it, but back in the time, I've never saw Afro-Latino or Afro-Latino actor. It was extremely rare. And if they were on TV, they were the maids or they were the slaves or something like that, depending on what the telenovela was about.
So you decided to come to Canada and, of all places, Saskatchewan, to pursue your theater degree. How in the world did that happen?
Well, it was a matter of scholarship and money.
Aha.
Yeah, I wanted to go abroad to do my theater degree. In that time, when I finished high school, my city didn't have a good theater program, and the only theater program that I had was a bit expensive, and it wasn't the greatest because it was a new program. So I knew that if I really wanted to, I don't know, like learn and be big, I have big dreams. So I thought that I needed to leave the country. And I applied to many universities in Canada, and I got in most of them. But money was a big thing. Going to Simon Fraser University was almost double the price in that time than going to USask. So at the end of the day, when I had to decide what my parents could afford and what I could afford with the student loan I was getting from back home, USask was the one that came into the game, and I got a scholarship for my first year. So that's why I ended up in Saskatoon. When I discovered this university, no one told me about the winter and anything. So I always said that they catfished me at the beginning because it just looks so pretty. Yeah. The pictures. I mean, the city is pretty. I'm used to it. I've been here for 8 years already. But in that time, coming from a big chaotic city, when I landed here, I was like, where am I? Like, this looks just like a small town. It was a bit of it was a cultural clash at the beginning, but then I learned to appreciate the calmness, not having traffic, more space. Yeah,
it was probably best. It's probably best that you didn't know about the winters because you may have moved on with your decision making. Because I can imagine the first winter was quite a shock to you after living in the environment that you were living in.
Definitely. I learned the hard way. I almost freezed to death outside with a friend of mine, waiting for the bus stop. I don't know. We didn't really organize ourselves with the bus pickup time. And we were like by the airport, and it was like -30.
Oh.
It was horrible. I don't know what happened. I can't really remember exactly, but we found shelter somewhere, and that's when we called a cab and we got picked up. But that's the moment that I felt like, okay, this is not a game. The cold here is deadly, and I need to learn how to survive in this area.
Right. So you did your theater degree at U of S. What was that like for you as a newcomer to this province and somebody from a vastly different culture? How were you perceived and welcomed within the student body, and how were your professors?
So, because as I said, I grew up with the privilege back home and not feeling that I didn't belong. When I moved to Saskatoon, it was just, I learned many things. Like I was like, I came with the same idea that things would have been the same. So, learning while I was in school that I was different. In my class, I was the only Hispanic, Latina person. It was eye-opening in many ways. So my year, it was one of the few years where you had a more diverse class. In my class, there was a Black woman, Asian, Canadian, and Indigenous person, and myself. So I felt that I belonged to a certain extent, but I also felt that we were just the token group, like the minority group in the class. But then I saw the upper years and the years before me, and the classes were mostly white. So then I realized we are that class, one of a kind class, that we have diversity. So it was an interesting journey where I have professors that support me in every way and were willing to understand my culture, understand me. When I moved, my accent was really thick. Like I really sounded like Sofia Vergara.
Mm-hmm.
So they worked with me to drill my accent, to understand and embrace who I was instead of trying to change it. I had other professors that tried to change me, and other professors that were ignorant and stay like that. But you deal with many kinds of people. So those who were very close to me and helped me and support me and accept me how I was, those are the ones that I keep close to my heart, and I call them friends and colleagues nowadays.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a journey. Yeah, those were the ones who supported me from day one till the end. And actually, I remember one of them was like my mentor before coming to university, because I had to figure out many things, like how to get there, the classes, register for things. So we were back and forth, mainly emailing back and forth. And now I call her my friend, right? So it was a very interesting journey when I discovered a lot about myself, and I made the decision to be proud of who I was, not change. And I knew that if I really wanted to make it into the arts, there was an option, like there was a chance of doing it, but I had to really work hard to speak up and not try to conform in that time was acceptable. They wanted me to change my accent to sound more Canadian, to let go certain things where I was like, no, I won't do that. I don't look white. Even if I sounded like that, I will never be one. And that's the problem that many Latinx actors have in the States and around the world, because they're born in Canada. So they sound Canadian, but they don't look Canadian according to what people think. And that's the problem when you're like, where am I from? So for me, why I was always struggling to understand, like, why do I need to change? First, one, I wasn't born here. 2, my accent is who I am, and I don't want to lose my culture. And 3, just because I have an accent or I look the way I do, means that doesn't mean that I cannot portray a character that is so common as a nurse or a doctor or a waitress,
Right.
So yeah, it was an interesting journey.
Or Shakespeare.
Or Shakespeare, exactly. Shakespeare was another thing that I refused for the longest time because I never saw myself there.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I learned Shakespeare was very white, very Eurocentric, that I never understood. I was like, I don't care about this guy. I don't understand him. I think the stories are very white and patriarchal. For me, it didn't make sense. And the way that I learned it in school was not the best way either. It was later on when I graduated that I took some workshops at Barb on the Beach and many other workshops that taught me that Shakespeare is universal. And I could see myself in Shakespeare. But in that time when I was in school, that was not the way it was introduced to me.
And we'll get to this later, but these are the challenges that many of us face on some level when we face the big bad world of casting. And I'm optimistic that that's slowly evolving, but I can imagine that it must be very frustrating to walk into a room in an audition where, their decision is very rapidly made just based on who they're seeing come in the room, and the willingness to take the leap to say, I don't really see the role that I'm casting being filled by someone who is Latinx and someone who has a noticeable accent. So I think we'll just be gracious and they say thanks and move on. And I'm hoping that that's happening less and less.
Yeah, definitely. And that feeling of frustration was one of the things that pushed me to create my own work and create my own theater company. Because once I was out of school, I was lucky to get a couple of projects, theater projects, but every audition that I would go, hoping, that I could have a chance, and I would work hard for the audition. I knew that I had already a disadvantage because I was not what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So that frustration that I had, because it was rejection after rejection every time, and that cordial smile of, oh, thank you, you did a great job. But I knew that I wasn't going to get it just because I wasn't the person that they were looking for. Because later on I will see the show and I will see someone who was just not like me. There was no color on the stage. I reached a point where I was about to drop out of this profession. I thought either I just focus on my psychology degree, because I also did a psychology degree.
Yes,
and
now
work on that area. Yeah,
that's interesting, and it is. The world of psychology is so fascinating to me, and it just makes total sense when I hear somebody pursuing a psychology degree as well, because it offers such insight to who we are as actors, such insight into our barriers and our stumbling blocks and our places of, the fear of going to places with our dramatic choices that we don't want to, and why it really probes the conscience of each of us. And that is one of the things that I think is just so rich about being an actor, is that we are afforded the luxury of looking at who we are, and how does that marry with the characters that we want to portray. So it's very cool, I think, that you did this degree as well.
Thank you. Yeah, you're totally right. It acting has a lot of things for psychology, and they really complement each other. I didn't know that until after my first year. That's when I discovered the big connection between psychology and acting. Funny thing is, I went to psychology because my parents didn't want me to just be an actor. They are just typical Latino parents, where they were like, yeah, no, you're not going to be an actor. I don't want you to go through the struggle of being a starving artist. Like, what are you doing with your life? They were very keen, and you have to get an actual degree. Yeah. And I told them, like, well, acting is an actual degree. They're like, And they're like, no, you need to. Like, we're not letting you go abroad if you don't have a plan and get another degree. So that was the condition for me to go abroad, do a double degree. So I got psychology. I wanted to do economics. And after my first year, I quit. I was like, I don't like numbers. I don't see myself being an economist. So I'm moving to psychology. So they were like, okay, fine. As long as you do another degree, we'll be happy. But it works out, and it relates a lot. When I approach a character, I have a really wide vision and a deep understanding of the struggles and this bio and psychosocial environment of the character just because of psychology. So it helps me a lot.
So you're frustrated. You're finished this degree. You're frustrated by the audition process and not really seeing yourself portrayed on stage. And this really does start to bring about the urge in you to create your own theater. And presto, Ay Caramba Theater becomes your baby and your creation. What was it like in the early days of Ay Caramba Theater for you?
Well, as I mentioned to you, I reached a point in my life where I needed to decide if I was ready to continue with acting despite all the rejection, or I would just focus on my psychology degree, get a master's, and be a psychologist, and keep going on that path. So in that moment, I thought, if I make my own work and I put myself on stage, maybe that will help me to get more experience. And one thing led to another. So then I remember telling this, I got an internship at Live 5, directing and dramaturgical internship with a former professor. And he was very happy to hear my idea of me wanting to write a play that had a mix of my culture, my personal experience, and the experience that I faced when I was working as a settlement worker. And I never written my play in my life in that time, so it was a total. It was a new project, something very different. I've never learned of it, so I needed a lot of training, and he was so happy and willing to help me. And that's how it started. I wrote my first play. I got a spot at the French Festival in 2019. So Ay Caramba opened in 2019, per se. That's when it was created. And it was created because I needed a theater to present my play at the French Festival in that time. And that first play that I didn't know exactly what I was doing, all I knew is what I was putting my heart into a paper and wanted to show something different to the Saskatoon community, something that they wouldn't see on Persephone stage or a main stage. Yeah. And it went really well. When I got the 4 out of 5 stars, that really sparked a fire in me, where I felt that I had something good and something that could make a change in the community. And there was a need for it. Then later on, I realized that Ay Caramba was the first Latinx theater in the province, which I was shocked. And yeah, that's one thing led to another one. Recognition came later on, and I started writing more plays because I enjoyed later on writing and creating my own characters, having that power of deciding who gets to be on stage and who doesn't. And now we have more projects. The team has grown into 3 people now. It's not only me. I used to be the jack of all trades. But yeah, Ay Caramba was created from a place of frustration and disappointment of the reality that I was living in. And now it's a place where I feel hopeful. There could be a new door for those upcoming artists, BIPOC artists who don't see themselves, who don't see themselves on stage. I hope that they can find a place, where they can feel connected and work with me.
How much of Yulissa is seen in some part in your characters? Which character have you written about who you most identify with?
Well, my first play named I Frida is a combination of myself, my story as an immigrant, and my culture, my experiences as a child, my mom, my dad, my brother, and the experiences that I witnessed when I work with newcomers family. That's the character that really, really speaks to my heart and is very close to who I am. Then the other characters that are written in their stories, they have a bit of everything. Mm-hmm. They have a bit of me, a bit of my friends and people that I interact with. But yeah, the closest one, the one that I would say, yeah, this is like maybe 60% of Yulissa. That's Frida from the play I Frida.
Which got chosen to be performed in the Singapore Fringe Festival. And fantastic timing for such an honor, right? Smack dab as we enter the global pandemic, right?
Yeah, I know. I was so excited to go to Singapore, and that's the main reason why I applied to it, honestly. Because one play from Saskatoon, written by Natasha Martina, also made it to Singapore in 2018, I think. Mm-hmm. So after the success in Saskatoon with Frida, I felt that, you know what, I'm going to apply to any festival I see. I don't know, I believed in myself. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. Worst thing that can happen is to say no, thank you. So I got into Singapore for 2021. And the pandemic didn't exist in that time, but a week later, COVID happened. And the festival was still like on, and they said, you know what, by January things will be over and you will be able to be here, but it didn't happen. So in October, we made the call to pre-record the show and send it to Singapore. So my face was there in Singapore, and my face was all over the bus stops and places like that, but I wasn't physically there. But the great part about digital theater now was that it was global. So anybody in the world could see it, something that wouldn't have happened if COVID didn't exist. Yeah. Because only the people in Singapore would have been able to witness the show. Here, everyone, including my family back home, was able to see the show, which was great.
Yeah. So you will eventually get to Singapore?
Maybe if I apply with another project in the future.
Right. I Frida was performed here first, yes?
Yes. So I Frida was performed in 2019 at the Saskatoon Fringe Festival. Right. And then I performed it again and recorded it in Saskatoon, and that was the version that was sent to Singapore in January this year.
Can we see the video recording anywhere, or is that just for archival and submission purposes?
Well, right now we only have archival because the video that was shown to Singapore, that was during the festival.
Yeah.
So we don't have the video like for public performances unless we apply to a festival and we show it like that. So we have archival videos, yes.
So you've got another play coming up in the Fringe Festival.
So the play that is going to be at the Saskatoon Fringe Festival this year is called The Newcomer. And this is a story of a man from South Sudan who came to Saskatoon as a refugee. It's actually based on a true story. It's based on the story of a friend of mine who came to Saskatoon as a refugee. And he was very happy to share his story. After he saw I Frida, he said, I want my story to be on stage. So I said, sure, let's make it work. But that was before COVID, right? So then I started writing the play and everything got canceled. So now the play will finally be on stage after a year and a half of being up in the air. So that's the show that's going to be this summer. And then my other play, which is a short 10-minute play called Trapped, that's the one that will be part of Camino's Festival by Aruna Theater in Toronto.
Are you directing all of your own productions?
No, I haven't dived into directing yet. I want to, but not yet. So Trapped has a cast of Latinx actors. It's a cast full of Latinx actors. And he will be directed by a Latinx director from Victoria.
Right. So you are reaching out beyond the borders of Saskatchewan with your work. I mean, as far as how they're presented here.
Yes, and that's something I think that's one of the perks of doing online things nowadays is that you can reach outside your own bubble.
Yeah.
So for Trap, I knew that it's a play that will be hard to perform in Saskatoon just because we need Latinx actors. I wrote it with the purpose to have a BIPOC team there and a diverse team. So we did it at the Shortcuts Festival, and that was going to be in person, and that was before COVID. And then when COVID hit, they decided to do it online, and that was a great way to experience how we can create work while being apart. And that made me realize that we can have actors from other places. So for that one, for the Shortcuts Festival, Trap was able to have actors from all around Canada and really bring that authenticity to the play. So that play went to work, like we had a couple workshops, and that's when I applied to the Caminos Festival, and now we're going to be in the fall in Toronto. And this time, this opportunity allowed me to reach out to the Latinx community in Vancouver. They have a really big community, and most of the cast are from Vancouver. There's an actor from Toronto, and there's one local actor too that are going to be part of this new digital experience of Trap at Luna Theater.
Your timing is perfect in many ways, COVID aside. I mean, as far as the creation of Latinx theater across the country, you've really walked in at an opportune time. When you're working with other companies and other Latinx communities, are you all speaking from the same place of frustration that you're just underrepresented in the world of live theater, or are some provinces further along than Saskatchewan is, or how's that all fit together for you?
No, I would say most of us come from the same place. In Vancouver, I know they created the CALTAS, the Latin American Coalition, just because they felt that they weren't represented enough in Vancouver, and there were so many issues with shows where they were cast by non-Latinx actors, and they were neglecting to hire those ones that were already there. Aluna Theater was created from the same place of frustration. Beatriz Pisano, who is the AD of Aluna Theater, also created because she felt that there was nothing in Toronto that could represent her. So I think all of us create things because we want to make a place for those who don't see themselves on stage. And we share the same feeling, the same experience. And we Puente Theater in Victoria was created because they didn't have a Latinx theater. They didn't have a theater that would represent the minorities. And that's why it was created. And now Puente has been there for so many years. So it's the same for Ay Caramba. We'll speak the same language in that aspect.
Your perseverance is to be admired truly because, it's not easy this is an understatement, it's not easy to create your own work. And I think sometimes it feels a little bit lonely and a little bit detached from, the theater world that is running in, theater, like full seasons of classic and plays and sometimes new plays, but they're new plays where you don't feel represented. I mean, it's an uphill climb at the best of times. Yeah, I would think creating all these new works, creating a new theater. I mean, do you have times where you think, this is a lot of work. I would just love to slide into a production that's already being done by somebody else and just go to the audition, get cast, get the gig, sign the contract, and just do something, for the lack of a better word, traditional right now.
100% every single day. I want to quit.
Yeah.
Actually, today I was like, I need to finish editing the play for my rehearsal at 5:30. So I'm like, I'm done. I'm tired.
Yeah.
But then you see your work on stage, then you see the opportunities and the new doors that are opening, and that other people are recognizing your hard work. And I think that's what pays off and drives me to keep going. But yeah, no, I would love to have a contract where I just go to rehearsal and don't have to worry about anything else.
There aren't nearly enough audition opportunities for that scenario in this province. Are you taking the opportunity to grab auditions elsewhere in Canada where you can, where you're challenging directors to say, look at me, this is actually a very unique perspective that you can bring to the stage, and I challenge you to think about it?
Yeah, I have. Before I Caramba, I always apply to auditions in Toronto, Vancouver, and I will fly there to audition.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm more connected to Vancouver, is because I've auditioned there a few times and I got to meet the community.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm always open to work somewhere else, because I think the more we connect with other artists across Canada, we can create more things. I think Saskatchewan used to being a bubble. Now with COVID and how things are changing and developing and evolving, people are starting to see that, okay, we can work with more people outside Saskatchewan. But yeah, so I've been always trying to reach out somewhere else, because I feel like here I was always being a bubble. And for my work, I try to bring people from other places, find the right person, even if it has to be out of the province. Because the main excuse that I heard here many times was, we don't have many actors of color. We don't have many actors who are minorities. And they stuck with that idea and they kept doing the same traditional thing. When I thought, you have money that you put into something else, why don't you bring someone from somewhere else? You fly people from Toronto who are white. Why don't you fly someone who is an actor of color to be on the stage? So those things, I really try to break that whole barrier that I've been seeing here in the province, which is changing. It has evolved in the past year because it was forced to change.
Yeah.
But that's something that I've been working really hard. Like the director for the newcomer, the Fringe Festival, I'm bringing them from Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, but that will pay off with the type of work that I want to put on stage, that I want to see. It will make justice of what I'm writing about. And there is something that your personal experience and your heritage and your culture cannot be replaced by the learning that you got from university. There's something about your own experience that will brings like a huge value into your work, especially in art. And that's where I try to look for, even outside Saskatchewan.
Has somebody taken you up on the challenge when you've gone to one of these auditions and auditioned for a role that would not typically be cast by a person of color? Has someone taken you up on that challenge yet and taken a risk on you yet?
No.
That's sad.
Yeah, I mean, I had a leading role 2 years ago, but it was a character of a person of color. But I haven't had the opportunity to portray a character that was always done by a white actor and put a Hispanic actor. No, I haven't had the chance yet. Hopefully one day.
That's one of the things that I love about Hamilton. The musical Hamilton is, it just turns everything on upside down, and I mean it casts people of color as the founding fathers. I mean it's just it's so wonderful to see, and my wish for you is that somebody does take that chance soon, because I sense that it will, because I really do observe and I'm reading a lot, and I really do think the desire is there to start breaking those stereotypes when it comes to casting. I mean, it's hard enough for the best of us. I mean, there's ageism. I mean, skin color aside, there's ageism, and just type alone, like nobody has ever performed a role with somebody that size physically before. There's challenges at the best of time. But then to go into an audition with something that's just clearly so visual up front, like skin color. I can't imagine what that must be like. So it makes sense that you would start to create projects of your own. It is admirable. That's an understatement that you've had this tenacity to keep going. And of course, you must have days every day where you just think, I can't do this anymore, because I mean, it's pulling teeth just trying to get funding for some of these things.
Oh yeah, every day.
Yeah. Have you had the opportunity to take your work back to your home?
No, I haven't, and it's because I mainly write in English, but I'm thinking about that. I spent the last 6 months in Ecuador, and I also have connections. Like I know there are the artistic community there in my city, in Guayaquil, and they were telling me to do that. Like maybe look into translating some work and editing and transforming it into so it can fit the audience there. So maybe in the future, there's something is being. We're talking about those things with some people there. We'll see. I would love to. I would love to bring my work there.
Lord knows you're not going to have to work hard to find a translator.
Well, things change. Like even though I speak Spanish, many things get lost in translation. So it's like writing a new script, but with the idea already set.
How did you wind up working as a settlement worker with newcomers? How did that happen for you?
Well, when I finished university, and because I was an international student, I have a lot of responsibilities to take care, and I couldn't just live the artist life like that. So I needed to find a full-time job that allowed me to stay in Canada and eventually allow me to apply for my permanent residency. And the only way that I could get that is with my psychology degree. I applied to many jobs, and then I landed this settlement worker position at the Open Door Society that helped me to achieve all the things that I needed to, help me to get a stable income every month, which allowed me to pay part of my loans that I had back home, and also had all the requirements that I needed to apply for my PR status later on. And I worked there for almost 3 years, and then COVID hit and things changed. But that also pushed me, that the new change challenged me to focus 100% on my theater company, which, believe it or not, 2020 was a great year for it. Like when everything shut down, for some reason, the doors opened for Icon and for me in a massive way. So we are succeeding thanks to the big massive change that happened in 2020. So I left Open Door last year when there were major cuts in funding, and I decided to focus on my artistic side and work on my master's degree via everything's online. So I thought, why not? This is the best time to get more education. And I knew that if I want to be a psychologist in the future, I need a master's degree. So I'm doing my master's online right now on counseling. But it's a great time right now. And that's how I landed to be as a settlement worker and have a lot of experience with newcomer families and get to know their stories. Beautiful stories, very heartwarming and humbling stories. And
you have that unique appreciation from having the perspective of being one yourself.
Yeah. And even so, I was once an immigrant, a newcomer. Everyone has a different story. Yeah. Everyone. And that's something that I feel most people think we're the same. We come from the same, basket. And no, you could be a newcomer that had a lot of privilege in your country, and you just moved because you want a better education, which that's what you usually see in university. That was me. I grew up in a family that had stable income, and I had privilege, and I was able to study whatever I wanted. But there's some families who have nothing. Some people who come running from war. So we don't all fit in the same spot as people put us here. And that's something that I learned while working with newcomer families, is to understand where they were coming from and understand how different we are.
What would you say, with all the experience that you have behind you now, what words of wisdom would you offer someone who's listening to this who feels underrepresented in their own artistic community, who has not yet taken that brave step to either pursue a degree because it doesn't seem possible that they'll ever be viewed as a serious actor because of their difference, be it cultural or whatever, and then what do you say to someone as far as being brave enough to go, well, if it ain't there, I'm gonna make it myself?
A lot of perseverance.
Yeah.
I think that is something that I have it in my mind every day, because there will be days that you cannot continue. And that perseverance of achieving what you want is what drives me to keep going. So my recommendation for, newer artists or anyone out there is just persevere. Persevere, because even though people might shut the door in front of you and say you are not good enough, you know deep down that you want to do something, so go for it. Go for it. Even everyone says no, because even though among those people that say no, there will be at least one person who has faith in you, and that's enough. That's enough for you to keep going and make your path. And when people see how much work you have put into it, and that might take time, that might take years, that might take days. Sometimes you feel like you're working so hard for nothing, but eventually people start recognizing that. And when people do, opportunities are going to start just like raining over you without even noticing.
It's paying off for you. I mean, the media coverage that you've been getting as of late is fantastic. I mean, you've had a chance to be a guest on CBC's Q with Tom Power. I mean, that's brilliant.
That blew my mind, because I didn't even know what the Q program was. I was contacted by them because they saw an article from Star Phoenix about me.
Yeah.
And the producer, and that's what I'm talking about, one person believes in you, and that opens many opportunities. That person, the producer, really liked my story and really saw potential in that. And she brought that idea to the CBCQ program team, and they liked it. And they welcomed me, they invited me to have an interview. But they could have easily said no, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Like, sometimes it's just one person that says, you know what, I like that, let's do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it happens. So yeah, I got to be there by chance. And, I said by chance to my dad, and he said, no, that's not called chance. It's called hard work. So anyway, I got to be there because of the work that I've been doing. And that was such a wonderful experience. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Am I going to be there? So I got to learn about the program, and I feel very flattered. And yeah, it's such a great memory right now.
And we can revisit that conversation because it's all there on the CBC app, in the archives of the vault that is the Q archive. So it's still there for people who want to go and have a listen to it. It really is encouraging. I don't have the same journey as you do as an actor, except to say that I have the same journey as do we all, of the frustration of landing the gig and hearing no too many times, and just the perseverance. And 35 years later, I still have a mother going, please get out of this business. So it's wise that your parents said, no, don't. Every good parent should say that to an aspiring actor. But it's challenging at the best of times when someone like me can fit into traditional roles that are traditionally casted by somebody that looks like me. So I'm inspired to keep going just by listening to your story and the challenges that you face, because you're breaking the mold. You really are. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate your kind words.
Hey, is your podcast still happening, Latinas in Saskatoon?
Yeah, it is still happening. It's just life happens, and we haven't been able to edit all our recordings. And we're also focusing right now on bringing a multicultural festival to Saskatchewan, the first Latinx festival in the province. So the podcast is like shifting a bit into programming right now, but we'll be back with more experiences. My partner also was in Ecuador, my podcast partner. So we both have so many stories of what it was like to come home after a year and a half of COVID and everything, and being there for 6 months.
Wait a minute. Your co-host is in Ecuador. You're doing it with that person in Ecuador, and you here?
No, we both went to Ecuador at the same time.
Oh, I see.
But she stayed there. I came back. Yeah, but it was just such a really interesting experience of being back after a while and after COVID and everything. So our season 2 focused on those things.
Right.
Eventually, it will see the air someday, hopefully, in the next few months.
That's on Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify.
Well, I'll be honest, I had no clue, nor did I ever even think about, I say this with a great deal of shame, about whether Saskatchewan has a Latinx community here, let alone a theater community. And it was because of that Star Phoenix article that I went, wow, how ashamed am I that I've never even given this any thought. And I just knew that I wanted to speak to the person behind bringing this awareness to your community and how it can fit into the landscape of theater in Saskatchewan. So I feel very lucky to have had the chance to spend an hour with you.
Oh, thank you. I'm very pleased that you invited me to be part of your podcast.
I look forward to hearing more of the great projects that you will have in this long career that I have no doubt you will have. Even if every day you feel like giving up, you're not.
Thank you, Kevin. That's very encouraging. I really need it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for listening. Music for SaskScapes is provided by Saskatchewan-born singer-songwriter Jeffrey Straker. SaskScapes can be downloaded from iTunes, Google Play, the SaskScapes app for Android devices, and all of the other major podcasting apps. Stop by and say hi to us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter @SaskScapes. I'd really appreciate it if you stop by iTunes and give us a review or star rating. That boosts the podcast series in the rankings and more people get to hear your stories. Now, if you know an individual, a group, a town that has a story to tell, I'd love to hear from you. Contact me and I'll let you know what's involved in sponsoring your own episode of SaskScapes. There's no shortage of stories to be told here under the land of the living skies. So until next time...